Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is August 23rd, 2019. And for those of you who've been following us in sequence, we are sort of 3 or 4 or 5 episodes into a series on BYU, how to survive and thrive at BYU as an unorthodox or non-believing student. And we are featuring something called the BYU Survival Guide, which is a guide, an online guide, a website found at BYUSurvivalGuide.com, entitled How to Navigate BYU as an X/post/New Order Mormon/never-Mormon. And we're really excited. This is a topic that I've wanted to cover for a long time. It's a topic that's really needed. And today on Mormon Stories Podcast, we have interviewed 4 wonderful people. We've had Bradley and Alana Butters here, married and a super cool couple. We have had Jared Brinton, brother of Janelle, if you don't mind me saying that, because I'm just a huge Janelle fan. And then we just had Andrew Jacobs on, and so they're all back to join us to talk about the BYU Survival Guide. Welcome, guys and girl, lady, young woman. What do you want me to say?
Thanks.
It's good to have you guys, and yeah, all of you. So really quick, I just think it's interesting. There's a tiny bit of history here that I think is kind of fun. So before I was at BYU, I went to BYU in '87. Before I was at BYU, there was this sort of rumor about an old newspaper, kind of a rogue newspaper, that used to be available called the Seventh East Press, I believe it was called. And that was at BYU, I want to say in the 70s or early 80s. I'm pretty sure that many of the people that started either signature books or that took over Sunstone from its original founders, they sort of sharpened their teeth or got their chops wet running this rogue underground newspaper called I want to say Seventh East Press. Somebody Google that. And somehow that died. And then the Student Review popped up. So by the time I was at BYU in '87, there was this rogue newspaper called the Student Review that they'd hand out once a week. And it would just, it had jokes. It had talked about feminism, LGBT people, liberal issues in the church history. And interestingly, for those of you who have heard of Joanna Brooks, she's kind of faded a little bit from public Mormon consciousness these days, but she was one of the writers or editors of the Student Review. And I, as a liberal kind of progressive BYU student, I always loved checking out the Student Review. From there, the Student Review died, but by the time I started Mormon Stories, Kate Kelly and Ashley Sanders, who is the granddaughter of Neil A. Maxwell, and several other students started something called Study Night, I think it was called, where they would all get together in someone's house, have liberal professors over. I even did a Mormon Stories Podcast episode where we interviewed Ted Lyon, my former BYU professor, former mission president, etc., in front of the study group that was their study night group at BYU during that little era in, let's say, the mid to late 2000s. And they're the ones who organized the alternative commencement, where when Dick Cheney was going to come, I guess, speak at BYU graduation, they got Ralph Nader to come do an alternate commencement. Have you guys even heard of that or not? Yeah, you guys have no freaking idea. This is so lame that there's just these memory holes that everything goes down. But the point I'm making is, like, there are always going to be liberal / unorthodox / non-believing BYU students. It's probably always been that way, but there's never been a permanent resource for them. And I'm sure that's by design. Like, why would the church ever want you guys to find community or support or help each other? It's kind of like either pretend everything's fine or leave, but certainly don't ever organize and find support, because this virus grows. So that's just a little historical background. And the new iteration that I'm aware of is these guys, the BYU Survival Guide. And so I found out about them a little while ago. We've been communicating for, I don't know, a year. I mean, a while. And who's Cosmo Sagan? Yeah, so like, I think I first heard about what you guys are doing on Ex-Mormon Reddit, and it's always interesting to see either current missionaries or current BYU students come out on Ex-Mormon Reddit and say, help me, I'm dying, on my mission or at BYU, and then telling stories. But I think that's where I first learned about the idea for the BYU Survival Guide, and we had to wait until all these guys graduated from BYU to be able to actually do this episode. So like we've had this in the works for half a year or more.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we can't, because we'll all lose our diplomas and throw our education down the toilet if we talk to you, which is kind of a weird, almost cultish, draconian kind of bizarre situation, but it's the reality. So that's just a little bit of history and context. Thanks for everyone who's joined us so far. Thanks to everyone who's here. And so let's begin, if it's okay, with just the history of how the BYU Survival Guide got started. And it has to be that this thing continues so we don't have to have this turnover. We got to have this thing persist. But let's start out by the history. So who started the first thing? Who was it?
So maybe I can start with kind of where we were and then pick up from there and how it turned into the survival guide. So we covered my group and its origination, and chronologically that was the very first.
Give us the short history just for those who didn't hear your episode, who just want to learn about the survival guide.
Yeah, so after coming off of my mission as an ex-Mormon end of 2016, early 2017, I found a very small group that almost immediately all left Utah County, so I repurposed it into
And how'd you find this group?
Online through an internet forum. I messaged a random guy, had to provide him excellent Exmo cred, and he eventually was like, okay, I'll let you know about this one group out here, sort of thing. It took a bit.
Because there's always this fear that like there's spies or like you could get kicked out, and so everyone's got to be like being double agent, spy, secret stuff to make sure no one ever gets hurt, right?
Yep. So much fear, so much paranoia. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got that group started in the summer of 2017, and that ran pretty well.
That's 2 years ago.
Yes, until fall 2018. In fall 2018, one of the times...
So what was this group? Like,
So it is kind of an underground ex-Mormon BYU group. At that point, we were more focused on like fully out, less so kind of also maybe other shades of non-Orthodox. And we would just be a support group for each other. We'd meet weekly, talk about our experiences, our faith transitions, what it's like to be at BYU, and just kind of provide support for each other. And then fall of 2018, I was doing my normal thing of kind of...
Wait, I have to ask. So you probably can't answer this, but I'm thinking you're meeting in coffee shops or in bookstores, in people's apartments, right?
Yeah, that general idea. We would make sure to meet in places where... and at times where the chances of running into other Orthodox students are extremely small.
And like, what's the feeling in the group? Is it like scared? Is it like happy? Is it...
Generally, it was when people first came, they were really scared. They didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, the person shows up for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. What do they look like? And
then very quickly,
are they wearing like an overcoat and glasses and like a hat? Like
fake names. People would use fake names sometimes. Yes, absolutely. And then very quickly,
that's so Russian. That's like it's Cold War, man. In 2018, 19.
Yeah, and then pretty much always within half an hour or an hour, they're like, "Oh, you guys are really chill. I can relax here. This is a safe space."
And do people share their stories? I'm guessing everyone kind of tells their story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Kind of introductions. Oftentimes, if we're small enough to make that work, sometimes we would have so many people it's just impossible, like just people swarming all over sort of feel.
What's the biggest group you've maybe experienced at one time, the most amount of people?
For me, it was 21 people. For them, they hit 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's crazy because BYU's got like 20 whatever thousand students. Like, there's like thousands of students probably going through this.
Yes.
We've done some rough estimates on statistics, and it's hard to nail anything down, but just based on reaching out in classes and like based on the class size and how many people respond. I sent out a learning suite message once. That was probably the gutsiest thing I did. And there was a class of, like 40 people, and I had 4 students that were responded positively and were interested.
10%.
So yeah, I think roughly it's been about a 10% at least.
And that was a religion class, which everyone is required to take. So it's not like that was a skewed
Engineering
sample.
or
It's a really small
women's
sample,
studies.
but yeah.
Yeah. I, for the longest time, operated off of the assumption that maybe 1% of BYU would fall into this category, which would be about 300 people. That's a lot more people than what we had been seeing for a lot of the time. But I think he's right. It's much higher, especially if you account for all the shades of gray in between, easily double digits.
Yeah, because the younger you are, the more likely you are to reject religion, period. That's what the Pew Foundation shows.
And with our limited ability to advertise within a few months, my group's grown to about 100 people. So there's obviously tons and tons more.
John Ogden estimates 20%. I don't know where he got that, but
At BYU?
yeah. So I don't know where he got that. I'm thinking it's more along 10%, but with like 33,000 students, that's like 3,300 students. That's a ton of students.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I wanted to share one experience. One of the meetings that we had, it was the one where 25 people came, and they all filed in silently, And at the time, I was still really against this idea because I was thinking, first of all, this is a huge risk for us. Like, second of all, don't people don't want this. People don't need this. You're like, I was having a really hard time getting on board and wanting to support this idea that we should support people that are struggling with faith at BYU, even though I struggled with faith because that's like, it seemed so bad to me still. And it was going around and listening to them share their stories one at a time. And hi, this is my name. And I remember at that meeting, there were 4 people that said, this group has saved my life. And being married to someone whose life has been in danger multiple times because of depression, like, they were serious, And so, like, I get when people are like, why would you take it upon yourself to, like, want to go against this thing that, it's BYU's brand? Why would you want to, like, tear that down? And it's not that. It's that, like, these students need help. And, like, who am I to say that I'm too good to help support these students that, they need friends. They need someone that's going to listen to them. And a lot of their families aren't listening to them. And you feel this responsibility to, like, be family for them and just love and accept them no matter where they are. And we had a lot of experiences, like, fulfilling that role for people, I think.
So how did it? So you started a group 2 years ago, and then did you not? So another group started. You guys didn't know about each other.
Yeah. So I had my own faith transition, and pretty quickly was done with the church, and noticed a friend on Facebook who had posted something about Love Loud. Reached out to them, and it was someone who we grew up with. Reached out to them and said, "Hey, where do you stand on the church?" We both opened up, and it was this huge, just therapeutic gushing of like, oh man, there's someone else. Like, I can't believe it. We went rock climbing together, her husband, and Alana and I. And there we were like, man, this is so awesome to get together and be able to talk about like our families and like church history and things that are hard and like our experience, and like we have all this stuff in common, and we're not crazy, and we're all at BYU, and we're all scared. And so, we kind of half jokingly like, well, we should start a group. And then I went home. I was like, wait, no, seriously, like we should start a group. That was awesome. And so the original group was Alana, me, and this one girl from our home stake. And I got really passionate about it. So part of something with type 2 bipolar is just becoming like obsessed and becoming like a workaholic with whatever your obsession is at the time. And I just like 24/7 was just living and breathing like this group and getting the word out there. I made flyers and started in the passing time between classes, just profiling students and, oh, this guy's got a beard, this girl has multiple earrings, short shorts, and passing out flyers. And it's within a couple of weeks, we had 20 people.
That's so missionary, man.
Yeah. Yep. So
an ex-missionary is a dangerous thing.
Oh yeah. If you don't do summer sales, then you've got to find something else to put your skills, your high pressure sales to.
The solar panels, insecticide, what else? Alarm systems.
Yep.
Okay. Or ex-Mormonism, one of the four.
Yeah. So I had this group on social media, and it was a closed, undercover group, underground, and I was the moderator of it. And security was kind of low. People had to apply to get in, and I would kind of vet them. It grew pretty quickly. And then I kind of just had to evolve the vetting process. And then, it was... I started, it was kind of hard passing out flyers. I was really nervous and decided, I went to Utah Valley OASIS. Is something that Alana and I really liked as a kind of alternative Sunday activity. It's just a secular community for good is their slogan. And so we settled on, agnostic, atheist, secular humanism. And that was really awesome. And it's not, anti-Mormon. It's not tearing down the church, whatever. While there, we met an ex-BYU professor who, I don't know his whole story, but he was awesome to talk to about church history and especially about evolution and biology because that was kind of his forte. And he referred me to talk to Jared. So we talk on social? Yeah, we talked on social media first, and then met up at a coffee shop and had to establish this mutual trust. And the way it kind of works with us is there's mutual anonymity. So I don't know who he is, and he doesn't know who I am. So there's, we're both safe, and we can both pull out if we sense that there's some.
So you're using fake
danger.
names at the time?
Yeah, fake names, shadow accounts of whatever platform, and.
Again, it's just so
yeah, I mean,
clandestine.
Yeah, if you get compromised, then just burn the account and move on, and so
deny it.
Yeah,
it wasn't me.
Yeah, plausible deniability. So
I can't underscore enough just how much paranoia there is around this. It's like literally any moment, if I make one misstep, I can lose my degree. And that just permeates the culture there for people who are non-Orthodox.
Yeah. And so I kind of grew accustomed to taking those risks and reaching out and kind of developed a system that worked. But the fear from people that I was reaching out to was huge. You're the honor code reaching out and this is like a sting operation, right? And you hear about the strengthening the church members committee and going to gay bars and taking pictures of license plates and tracking down members and things like that. And so...
Yeah, so back in the 60s, there was an administrator named Ernest Wilkinson. The Wilkinson Center is named after him. And it was and maybe even in the 50s, but there was this whole communist scare. There was a concern about communists or liberals at BYU. And so there was this spy ring that the president of BYU instigated where he would have BYU students telling on other BYU students they were too liberal, they were homosexual, whatever it was. And they would even spy on professors and turn in professors that were teaching liberal doctrines. So, I mean, there's a history of spy stuff going on at BYU, right?
Yeah, and the students who are struggling take crazy precautions to be safe, and it's all motivated by fear. So, like, girls, if they're not wearing their garments, they'll wear an undershirt so that people never ask them why they're not wearing their garments. Or they'll only do their laundry at certain times of the day when no one will see their laundry so that they don't notice they're not washing garments. Or, they feel like they can't go to church and be like healthy, like church is so hard for them, so they'll stay home from church, but they'll change into church clothes so no one asks them why they didn't go to church,
yeah.
And so it's just this fear. We went to something in Salt Lake to support Sam Young, and it was like, we got to wear sunglasses. Like, no one can take our picture. No one can ever see us. And that takes a big emotional toll on many students to live like that.
And my picture ended up in the Salt Lake Tribune, wearing glasses. And as they took the picture, I held my sign up in front of my face, And so
Were
that's
you scared or proud? Which one?
both. I mean, I knew it was a danger, and I was willing to kind of put it out there. But yeah, I was wearing sunglasses, and when the media was present and kind of stayed aside, but the fear is real, and people have to take precautions and keep up a facade. And at the same time that you're going through a faith crisis and dealing with other things that are hard. And so, yeah, it just really wears people down. There's massive paranoia. So that was kind of the setting in which Jared and I found each other. My group had grown by that point, and we never really merged groups per se. Jared kept his group separate, and I kind of managed my group. And both Andrew and Jared participated in my group. I never went to their meetups. And yeah, it turned out to be really, really great. We had a lot of crossover. People from their group came to mine, and people from mine went to theirs. And yeah, it was great. And so once I found Jared, it was referred to Jared on social media, I started using social media more. I was a lot more effective with my time, with my limited time. I could scroll through accounts and find, oh, this girl's like super, super feminist. Oh, wait, she has like these 5 friends that are also really feminist. And then message them from different accounts. And anyway, from there, it just really took off. Yeah, just different forums. Yeah.
I kind of want to highlight also that like the reason that we kept the 2 groups so separate was part of this paranoia, is that if it was the case ever that someone was able to effectively infiltrate or compromise any of the groups which are operating in secret, then we didn't want everyone to go down at once. We didn't want this entire system that we had built to collapse. And so we just tried to do everything we could to keep all of our eggs in separate baskets so that if something ever came up, we could keep something going.
And something I wanted to point out here, we're talking a lot about all this paranoia and fear and like the honor code going and outing people. All of the evidence that we know shows that at the moment, the honor code does not do anything actively to go and try and out people. They are a very passive organization at this point. They pretty much respond only to people's submissions of, hey, I saw this person do this thing, sort of thing. So as a result, we kind of have a list of here are the biggest risks. And the number 1 is your roommates. I have known 2 people who got suspended or expelled during my time here due to these sorts of issues. And both of them were a result of roommate issues. Number 2 is bishops. You want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your bishop. There's the occasional time where you're at the wrong end of bishop's roulette, and that can turn out badly, but it doesn't happen that much. And then a much more distant third are things like going to groups outside of campus and talking to people about your story and that sort of thing. So as a result, there's this huge culture of paranoia, and most of it is unfounded. The vast majority of it is not as necessary as people think it needs to be.
I agree with you up to one point regarding bishops. I think most bishops, great people, and I really support them in what they do. I've never had a bishop that I didn't think was an awesome person. The only reason that I think that this is problematic is because bishops are given such a subjective set of rules. And there are some cases where a bishop's subjective judgment is vastly different than another bishop's subjective judgment. And so that leads to really fluid standards for people who are living and moving from apartment to apartment around BYU, because the standards under which they live are constantly moving and they have no idea what these standards are. And I was talking with one of my past bishops, and he explained to me, and this was in an interview where I thought that I could possibly be kicked out of the school. And so I was recording the interview, and he just happened to explain to me, not in an aggressive way. This was the whole meeting was wonderful. And so I've only included this as an informational thing, not to play gotcha with this bishop. And I love this bishop to death. He was wonderful to me. But I just want to explain just how powerful their judgment is. I have a recording of one of my bishops saying that when a bishop this is in regards to attendance at church on Sunday, he told me that he can issue 2 kinds of revocations of ecclesiastical endorsements, and these can happen solely on his judgment. This is just what happens. If he feels there are some, well, first I should explain that there are some explicit rules that they have to follow as far as issuing and revoking ecclesiastical endorsements, but some rules that are subjective. One of the things that's explicit is church attendance. If a bishop doesn't see you at church for a majority of the time, then they have the prerogative to issue a soft revocation or a hard revocation. And he explained the difference to me. The difference is a soft revocation, he calls the honor code, and the honor code immediately suspends the student. Just a suspension. A hard revocation is issued also immediately, and he just calls the honor code office and says, this is the student that I need to give a hard revocation to, and they are instantly expelled. No questions asked, no rule set process, there's no appeal. This just happens. There's nothing you can do to fight it. It just happens. And so this is a very real threat, but it's a very rare threat, but it is very real.
There is an official appeals process, I think. When the bishop when he pulls the hard revocation, your classes are instantly dropped and there's no questions asked. You can go in and ask for a form, fill it out, and not defend yourself in your innocence, but ask for an exemption from the ecclesiastical endorsement requirement. And again, to my knowledge, that's never happened. I think I've heard of 1 or 2 people trying, and you've already been expelled, and so it's just an easy no at that point. And then one other thing with the security, I think I had maybe one likely and maybe another one, possible moles. And by that time, I'd kind of perfected my, not perfected, but bettered my enhanced my vetting process. And we had someone that tried to get into the group. It was kind of questionable where they stood. And I had barriers to entry that...
Do you have to like drink a bottle of vodka? Like, what do you have to?
No.
Some initiation.
No.
Like, burn your garments.
No comment.
I don't think we want to be explicit on exactly how we prove that.
I'm just being silly. My mind's going because
the church is going to hire private investigators that aren't members, and then so.
I think we can say that there's very specific things that you can tell a Orthodox Mormon will never do that thing, sort of thing. And there's some very easy markers that you can.
My imagination is going crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to tell.
And anyway, there was some kind of hesitation there, which I understand. And I try to be flexible with what students are comfortable with. But it prompted me to do some further investigation. And this person worked directly with the Honor Code office. And so that was a big red flag. And I was really close to, letting them in. And they were a student. They'd expressed some struggles and, expressed disappointment at my hesitation. But, I'm sorry if you know who you are and you didn't get in, but it's a huge risk. And so at that point, there's 60 people who are at risk in my group. And so you got to play it safe. But yeah.
One of the reasons why we decided to keep the group separate is that there was a different level of risk tolerance in the two. So Bradley was out there handing out flyers, messaging his entire religion class. And for us, we had been much more underground, kind of, that didn't sit well with a lot of people. So in order to accommodate people who aren't willing to maybe take those risks, we kind of have separate groups on that level.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes sense. Okay, so before we jump into the guide itself, I have a kind of a devil's advocate question. What if you just called the group Unorthodox Students at BYU and nobody felt the need to actually say the details of their disbelief, and it was just a group for alternative students to find support? Then it wouldn't need to be clandestine because it's not professing to be anything other than a little bit left of conservative.
Then you run into the same problem as your roommates, right? You want to talk about your doubts, you talk about church history, and
you need to be able to.
It's what you need to talk about that you can't with Orthodox members. So if you call it, the unorthodox group and it's not clandestine, then anyone can come and anyone can out you. So there's not that trust.
The point of these groups is to be a support group. And so if we have a bunch of conflicting ideals and values within that support group, it really only leads to conflict within those people in that group. So it's best, in my personal opinion, just to allow people to have a space to express their opinion without judgment. And there are other venues to have your opinion criticized and have your entire moral foundation thrown under the bus and criticized. But in this case, this is just meant to help people find the social support that they need, the kind of social support that recedes when you say, hey, maybe I don't believe in this kind of thing anymore, and you lose certain friends and sometimes you lose family. This is supposed to take the place of a friend group and a family.
Yeah, and so the mission statement that I put on my group says, faith crisis is hard, and faithful Orthodox members can make it harder. This group is intended to be a space where questioning, doubting, or disillusioned BYU students can meet, mingle, and voice their concerns. Outings will be organized, questions can be asked in the media. Anyway, things can be shared. Intellectual freedom and acceptance is our goal. And so, yeah, we kind of just touch on that, openness and not having to hold back. Yeah, so.
Before we go into the survival guide, I'd like to talk a little bit about the BYU Idaho and Hawaii groups and how those came about, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so around the same time that Bradley started his group, so this was about a year ago, last fall, one of the times I was advertising our group on the internet, several people reached out to me saying, hey, I'm at BYU Idaho, and is there anything for me? And I basically told them, no, there isn't any. However, if you'd like to start it, I am here and happy to advise and help that happen. And one guy at BYU Idaho took me up on that. So me and Andrew, we had this fun little outing where we went exactly to the halfway point between Rexburg and Provo, middle of nowhere. We found a rundown bar there, and we met this guy there. It was just the funniest situation ever, and like over handshakes and drinks and going over documents and stuff, we kind of hashed out, all right, here's everything you need to know if you're going to do this safely and if you're going to make this a success up at BYU Idaho. Kind of talked through all of the different things you need to know. And then he went and he started his own group, and it was also very successful. Last I checked, there's somewhere in the 30 to 40 person range up there in that group. So that was great. And a couple weeks later, someone reached out to me for the same question for BYU Hawaii. And that time I was like, oh, I can't meet with you in person, but I would love to kind of advise you on how to do this. So we had some calls and we went through all of this stuff. And then he started up his own group as well. And BYU Hawaii is a very small school, only a couple thousand people in the student body. So at the moment, they're like 5 people, but it's something. At least there is some resource there for support groups for people who are non-Orthodox. And this was part of the reason why we started thinking about the survival guide. That coupled with learning about Bradley's group, because at this point we had suddenly gone from one known group to 4 in the course of several months. And it was starting to get very hard to manage those interactions between all of them, who goes into where, that sort of thing. And
security.
Yeah, security. All the different groups have their own like little cultures and like risk tolerances, levels of outness, how much they're focusing on like LGBT support, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to keep them separate because they all had their unique support that they are providing. So the survival guide became our solution to kind of tie all of these different groups together into one kind of central space where you can just go here and then you can find the resources you need.
Yeah, and a big shout out to all the BYU Idaho students. The rules there are a lot stricter. Reporting your roommates and kind of the spy on your peers is a lot more encouraged. And so from stories I've heard and student experiences, it sounds like the culture is a lot more toxic and a lot worse off with the dangers and risks. So.
And then with BYU Hawaii, it's the opposite. They're much more laid back than here. So it's interesting just to see the cultural differences even between the BYUs.
And we need LDS Business College and Southern Virginia University. So we need this to grow.
Yeah. If you are at those colleges and would like to get involved with this, reach out to us and we can
Is there an email address?
There's a form on the BYU Survival Guide that you can fill out either to find a group or with kind of like giving us feedback sort of thing. So either way, you can reach us and we can contact you that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just to kind of promote the group, like some of the things we did. So we had a big Halloween party. We did a Thanksgiving dinner for students who didn't go home over Thanksgiving. That was really awesome. We did a Christmas gift exchange, and that was the best attended event. It was really hard because it was the end of the semester, people had exams, but I think that was where we had 25 people came out, and it was really fun. We played a lot of games, and did our gift exchange. And that was the one where we had a lot of brand new people who hadn't participated. This event, this is something else. We try not, at least in my group, I try not to regulate explicitly what goes on, right? It's a support group, and so we support people how they are. If that being said, we want to have events that a diversity of students are comfortable attending, and so we will designate events as explicitly honor code compliant. And so this Christmas party we had a lot of students come out, and tons of students we'd never seen before, who were in the group and had been vetted, maybe not personally. And so we went around the room and we all shared our experiences, and I felt the spirit, it was so touching and like, wow, this is making a difference. And there's so many people. It was awesome. We've done movie nights and we have a movie list, we watched The Truman Show, The Matrix, Kumari. Yeah, just all these shows about religion and paradigm shifts and things like that, and had some really, really deep philosophical discussions on like the meaning of life and like searching for purpose and like living without religion or living without Mormonism, and where do you stand on Christianity, just all sorts of things like that. And it's been a really beneficial, positive experience. So
beautiful. Well, let's get to the actual survival guide and let's talk about some of the topics that students can find there. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. So again, the URL is BYUsurvivalguide.com. Talks about why it's necessary. Let's just do like a lightning round and talk about some of the topics in you guys' perspective. So number one, Bishop's interviews. What are the top issues or thoughts or concerns about Bishop's interviews or techniques? Who wants to jump in?
This is one of the ones that kind of lent itself to my magician background, only because we discussed also earlier that a very high number of men just in general masturbate. And so in this case, I discuss in that page that bishops can sometimes appear as if they're reading minds. And it's a classic trick within magic and magicianry. And I don't mean to say that bishops are actually trying to trick people. They're just accidentally acting upon a specific trick that magicians can use. This is a method that is easily stumbled upon. And it's just that saying something with the effect of like, I'm reading your mind, and just simply having the authority over somebody where they might believe you gives you the credibility where they are susceptible to believe, yeah, you're actually reading my mind. And in one of these cases, it's very easy to imagine, because I'm sure it's happened to many of us, where a bishop says, is there anything you want to talk to me about as a young man? I think that you may be struggling with pornography or masturbation. And that seems, to a young man, that pierces deep. I know it's happened to me. And I thought that he was reading my mind or like sensing my spirit, but that's really not the case. I was one of almost 100% of the world. And so it seems like he's hitting me with a bullseye, but really he's just throwing a dart at a board that he can't miss. And it's really important to recognize that bishops, in some case, like, you can believe what you want, and you can believe that a bishop has authority over you, but it's important also to recognize that you are your own person and privileged to your own thoughts.
Something I had
and your own privacy.
Yeah. And something I had a counselor tell me, and this was with regard to talking to family, but I think it's applicable here, is you're in control of the conversation and how much you tell. And so if at any point you start being uncomfortable with it, like you can pull out, you can abort and just, stop disclosing if you feel like you might be in danger. So you're in control and you can go in with however much you want to disclose. So.
All right. Any other thing about Bishop's interviews? All right. Next one's church attendance. Now, is this a guide of like how to not have to follow the honor code? Like, does this give tips on, because I hear about people like attending other wards or like telling their current bishop that they attended a missionary farewell or homecoming, attending a home ward. Like, is part of this giving tips on how to circumvent the honor code a little bit?
So that's a huge conglomeration, right? So some students are needing that. Some students are totally fine continuing living the honor code, except for that part where like you have to have faith. And so this is just like topics for everyone. Some people still want to go to church. Some people still want to pay their tithing. Some people, want to abide by all these things. And there's a huge number of students struggling with faith that fall into that category. But there's just a ton of students with tons of different needs.
From another way that we approach that topic is basically letting people know where the target is, because there are certain set things that the honor code is looking for in your church attendance, like should you be attending sacrament meeting or Sunday school or priesthood? What are the most important ones? How often per week are like the thresholds that they're looking for? So understanding the target there and what the requirements are is really important in understanding your own strategy and how will I be approaching this part.
And there's just some thought-provoking questions too, like what are you personally comfortable with? Are you comfortable with lying? Are you comfortable with, paying less tithing? Just kind of some ethical considerations. And if you lean more Orthodox, then obviously you need less adaptations to the honor code. It's just what students need.
The site is kind of built around enabling people to act freely, and some of these things are really shackles that are built implicitly into the honor code, not explicitly. And I don't think that there should ever be implicit regulations in something that holds so much, like implicit subjective regulations that hold so much
high stakes
weight. Yeah, there's such high stakes. And so the way it's built is to enable people to live as they want. And so obviously, as you become less and less Orthodox, being at BYU becomes more and more difficult. So the site can sometimes appear as though it's catering specifically to the absolute most non-Orthodox Mormon. But the case is really just that it becomes far more difficult the more you go down that spectrum. And so really this is there to help everyone. And these steps are only to be taken if you want them. They're not there to convince you to take them. They're only there as instructions for if you want to. We never advocate what you should do, just what you can do.
And if you have better ideas, like it's up for.
Why do you guys have an email address that people can just email ideas to?
There's a form at the bottom for suggesting edits to the topics, and
is that just more secure to have a form?
Yeah. So I don't want to give anyone ideas, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
It's more secure. Okay.
This is a living document for sure. This is ongoing. We have 2 articles, for example, in the works right now.
Modern Revelation, is that what you're saying? Kind of like
taking a Mormon phrase. Yeah, so we're trying to edit this and grow this and make it as adaptive as possible. So as much feedback as possible is welcome.
So tithing settlement, what are some of the recommendations there?
Like I said before, that's up to the student, right? So like we went ahead and paid a full tithe because we felt like we maybe owed it because we were getting tithing money from like the university, like a tuition rebate. But speaking as a voice for many, many students that I know, they have a really hard time with it. They're already, taking out student loans. They feel really robbed by the way the church spends their money. And so that section kind of talks about how you can keep an ecclesiastical endorsement and do something that feels morally good to you.
And as a student, your tithing is like a drop in the bucket of the church, right? So if you disagree with how the church is spending the money and, it's obviously not going a lot towards your education, there's all sorts of justifications you could use. And so, there's a variety of approaches.
This was written in a way that's intended just to express the moral ambiguity regarding the topic, because some people like Alana and Bradley felt is that it's far more ethical to donate to this institution because I agreed to it. Other times you can be put in a system where you don't agree with how the system operates and you feel that it's far more ethical to break that system's to fight the system from within. Other times, some people can feel like, well, most, at least I know this was the case for me. I'm not trying to say that my parents didn't help me. They are helping me significantly with school. But there are many parents who don't help their kids financially through college because BYU is so cheap and they're already paying tithing, that the 10% of their income that would normally go towards helping their children get through college is now being dedicated towards tithing. And so they see that tithing money is coming back to them, and they don't feel that they need to pay into that because it seems morally ambiguous there. I don't know any statistics on this. I just know through anecdotal evidence of my friends, but it seems to me that of my friends who attended other colleges, there are higher rates of their parents financially supporting them rather than at BYU.
All right. What's the section about what is anti-Mormon material about and why does that need to be there? Is that something a bishop might ask? Is that in the temple? That's not in the temple recommend. Is that in the honor code interview?
Another focus of this site is just to help people understand that the conclusion, it's also to help Orthodox Mormons understand the positions of non-Orthodox Mormons. So you don't have to agree with them, but I think it's a reasonable expectation to say, okay, I came to my conclusions in a reasonable fashion, and just because you don't agree with me doesn't mean that both of our positions are unreasonable. And one of the things that's very, very often used as a crutch to say your position is untenable is that you are using anti-Mormon material. And so the idea is just to say that the only thing that's anti-Mormon is opinion. Facts cannot express bias. Yeah, express bias. It's neither pro-Mormon, neither anti-Mormon. And so the idea is just to say that if somebody has come to a conclusion by way of specific facts about history or about the world or about philosophy, as they understand them, it's not an unreasonable position for them to take. You just don't agree with it. And that's okay.
What's the section about experimentation and harm reduction about?
So one of the things that Andrew talked about in his podcast was how he came to his friend and was like, hey, I don't believe in the church anymore. And he was like, great, you want to try weed? I think this is a very normal part of the move out of the church, is kind of this brief period where it's like all the restraints have been let go and you go and you do all of the things. And oftentimes people can be very unrestrained about that and not very safe about it. One of the things you miss as a Mormon growing up is a lot of the harm reduction sorts of talks to tell you hey, for example, with sex, we're not going to tell you have to be abstinent. Yes, that's generally the best way for harm reduction. But here is all of the things you need to know if you're going to go about practicing safe sex. And it is the same thing for coffee, tea, alcohol, drugs. So we want to make sure that, especially when people are so vulnerable, and especially when there's the added pressure at BYU, that they have all of the information they need to know to make the decision of, do I want to try these things? To what extent? How will I be safe doing this if this is what, in fact, I'm going to do?
Yeah, so you've got sections on coffee and tea, sex. Let's talk about consent in there. Alcohol, drugs. It's just kind of how to be safe. Because, that's true. When now that I have kids that aren't necessarily in the church, I don't have anything I have no advice to give them because I don't know anything about extramarital sex, really. I don't know anything about drugs or alcohol, I'm clueless. So
Yeah.
so that puts us in danger because we didn't get to learn responsible alcohol or drug use or consent or healthy sexuality. We never learned it. We're kind of infants that way, right?
Yeah, and again, we're not advocating for this. A huge number of students
Yeah,
that,
that's clear.
Yeah, like that don't believe, continue to choose not to do those things.
Like me.
Yeah, yeah, but we don't want those students that do experiment to be in
Danger.
danger.
Yeah, self-harm.
Yeah, it's just all about risk
love it.
reduction. That's really the
What-
main thrust of this page.
What's maintaining appearances about? Is that like beards and garments and the skirt length? What is that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is about like deflecting attention from yourself. One of the things that I noticed was really, really effective, both growing up and at BYU actually, is you may be familiar with the gray rock technique. It's a method of dealing with narcissists where you basically make yourself seem as uninteresting as possible. That's a way to avoid their drama and the way that they kind of suck energy out of you, sort of feel. And a lot of those applications or those principles apply to BYU as well. A lot of this is kind of, you want to deflect attention from yourself. Like you don't want your roommates like really digging into your life or else there could be some adverse outcomes there. So that page is all about like, here's some tips on how you can go about avoiding the unwanted attention that could lead to trouble for you.
Avoiding the appearance of evil, basically.
That's a good title.
And there's students that are willing to push the envelope. You know, that are willing to
No
like
names mentioned.
announce in their philosophy class, like, "Hey, I don't believe in God." Like that definitely happened, but most students aren't ready to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I see there's a shout out here for the CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services. I happen to know that there are several really sharp people there. I'm not going to give any details about that, but there are very LGBT friendly and
Faith crisis
friendly therapists there who are legitimately affirming and supportive
and very professional.
and very professional. And you kind of don't have to worry about telling them I'm an atheist or I'm gay or I hate the church or whatever, because and it's free. So freaking use CAPS, right? And they're also not going to recommend reparative therapy there. They're not going to shame you. They're not going
Pray
to
and read your scriptures.
They're not going to tell you to pray and read your scriptures. They're not going to turn you in to the honor code office. And so freaking use CAPS because they're brilliant geniuses there for the most part, from what I understand. And may long live the current staff at BYU CAPS. Is it bad if I give them an endorsement? That's probably not good for them. No, but like maybe administration is going to be concerned, but
They are a little bit understaffed, so it can sometimes take a couple months to get through that system unless it's an
holy,
emergency.
What the
Yes.
months?
So
Months. Yep.
So just say that you're suicidal and then you can get right in. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. I'm just
And it's really important to know that they literally can lose their licenses and their careers if they share any information about you to people outside of CAPS.
Yeah.
So they're bound by law
Yeah.
to keep it confidential for you.
no, that's true. Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Okay, you've got guidelines for like callings and self-care, LGBTQ resources, which is great. Talk about other, like there's BYU USA, right?
USGA.
Sorry, USGA, yeah. Talk about that really quick for those who don't know. Anyone know about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really want to speak for those groups on here necessarily.
No, but just so people know
yeah,
about
yeah.
them, right?
So and they're not affiliated in any way with the
Formally.
with the non-believer movement. But yeah, USG
Or
is
with
great.
BYU, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, USG is great. What
is it?
It's the
Understanding Same-Gender Attraction
yep,
group
Understanding.
for LGBT BYU students.
Yeah, and so they're I've only gone to one with a couple of friends, and it was awesome. Have you guys gone to more? Or yeah, they bring in speakers. There was like 100 people, maybe. It was a historian that you interviewed. David Bokovoy. Yeah, it was really great. And they take care to protect their members and comply with honor code stuff. there's a ton of Utah Valley organizations of varying purposes and age groups. There's ones for millennials. There's one that's, for a little bit older people. There's ones that are a party, and there's more like intellectual ones. And so that's kind of something that the Survival Guide can do as well, with referring people to not only BYU group affiliated groups, but also outside groups.
And in Circle's good.
Yeah, and Circle's really good.
Circle's great. Yeah. Okay. For this part about finding a group or joining your group, what's the process for someone joining one of your groups? And what can they expect when they to get in, and then what can they expect once they get in?
So as it is now, there's a form we have a page that just describes the necessities of a social support group. Like, people just need spaces where they can be authentically themselves and express themselves freely without fear of criticism or resulting in harm to themselves financially or any other way. And so as it is now, there's a link that you can click on the Finding a Group page that brings you to a Google form in which you just answer some questions. Please answer them honestly, that are intended just to gauge your level of faith. And this isn't intended to be a barrier to entry, just so that I know, because as of now, I'm the one looking at all these, just so that I know where you stand, and then I can help point you in the best direction of what group to go to. And from there, I just kind of try to keep everything on the back end, and I'll point you to these guys, other guys, some other ones. Not going to say any specific details, but the idea is just to help you find people you can connect with.
And I guess they have to trust you that you will not betray them.
I go to UVU.
What if you're a mole? What if you're like a member of the church strengthening the members committee?
I go to U of U now, and I hope that's enough street cred as a non-BYU student.
You left BYU, right? If the church hired you to leave BYU and then go to the U,
they'd be
so
sad.
that you could vet or ferret out non-believers, that'd be pretty extreme. I mean, you never know, but
yeah. Well,
so will you testify today?
They at least don't get my money anymore.
Right.
I absolutely I care about you, and I just care about making sure that people have a home, and it's something that I think everyone deserves and should be privileged to. I really want. I will treat your information as if it's my own, and won't give it to anyone besides. It will only reach my eyes, and
this is coming from a cybersecurity professional.
Not professional. I am very much not professional, but
aspiring.
Aspiring, yes. Yeah.
What are the group rules? Are there group rules to keep people safe?
Depends on the group.
Yep, depends on the group.
What are some of the safety rules for some of the groups?
So, for example, making sure that you have express permission of everyone before taking pictures, and especially before posting any of it on social media. That's a very big one. Definitely things about no sexual harassment, no racism, bigotry, those sorts of things. Those are pretty universal throughout all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And accepting just wherever you are, if you're, no matter what you are or aren't comfortable with, no matter if, just acceptance is a big rule.
Yeah, whatever reduces risk. So
a lot of them aren't hard rules. They're more like, hey, here's what you need to know in order to reduce your risk while you're in this situation. Here are the guidelines, and you don't have to do this, but we would recommend this based on what we have seen over years as to keeping yourself safe.
And even within the group's so large now, there's 100 people. Months ago when there's 60, different people would host different events at safe houses and safe spots. And you can kind of know what the event's going to be and whether you want to attend or not, So yeah, you can kind of judge and go to events that fit you and fit what you're comfortable with.
All right. So you've got a transfer guide here for students who want to transfer. That's really helpful, super important. And then you've got relevant links, which it's like links to podcasts, links to Truth Claims websites, other support groups. Really cool website.
I should note, as far as Truth Claims websites, we try to keep them as balanced as possible. So if you see a website that you think, oh, that's going to have views that I disagree with, hopefully also there's a site on there that
you've got Fair Mormon, you've got the church's gospel topics essays.
Yeah, there should be an even distribution of, oh, this is pro, this is con, something so that you can weigh things as you like.
And I've never heard of a careful examination. That's new.
That's one of my favorites.
Really? I'll have to check that out. It's it's a GitHub site, so I actually can't give the URL in any meaningful way, but you can find it. If you go to the BYU Survival Guide, you can get a link to a new kind of like CES letter-like website or Mormon Think-like website called A Careful Examination. Who knew? You guys taught me something today, and I'm kind of old. Like, I'm 50. It's hard to teach a 50-year-old something these days, but you guys did it. And I'm very grateful that Mormon Stories is the first podcast listed. What do I need to do to stay? And
Sponsor us.
Sponsor you with money? What do you mean?
No.
Does this count as sponsoring?
Yeah, definitely.
Like a full day of my commitment?
Yeah.
Does that count? That's what you got to do. Step up other podcasts. You got to find a way to support these guys. All right. So I think we've kind of covered a lot of the stuff. It's almost time to adjourn. It's 5:00. Any final thoughts or comments or experiences, kind of an epilogue, things you guys didn't say in your interviews that you want to say? Now's your time.
I just kind of want to say that I love my family. I think they're great. That I hope nothing that I've said today impacts our relationship in any meaningful way. But if it does, hopefully it's for the best. And I love you and care about you as equally as I care about all of the people that I've talked about caring about today, if not more. And I really value the values that I've been raised with, and I hope that I can take all the good things that have been taught to me at BYU and my family and the church and apply them in the future and help spread them as I go throughout life.
Thank you.
I think that by nature, it's easy to as kind of having gone through a faith crisis, it's easy to focus on what you don't believe in, and what you don't affiliate with and what you don't want to do. But I think that Alana and I are much happier living authentically. And, we had to re-examine everything, kind of like Jared was saying, looking at each rock. We looked at parenting without religion. Like, how do you do that? That's something that's super relevant to us. And we found, some mommy blogs that were addressed that. And we really fit and kind of identify with secular humanism and just doing good for the species and just feeling like a camaraderie. A lot of my views about the world have changed. We don't need, we've just rebuilt it on our own.
Yeah. And, just really focusing on like charity, wanting to be there for people that don't have anyone, especially people whose families aren't there for them. We just saw so many students who were abandoned for a while, and we don't want anyone to be in that situation. And so we just, charity suffereth long and is kind, and that's just what we were trying to do. And we're going to keep doing that. Like, BYU's motto is enter to learn, go forth to serve. And like, we learned so much, and like now we're going forth, and I'm going to be the very best teacher I can be and teach my kids good things. And Bradley's excited about engineering and like furthering the human, going to space. So yeah, BYU gave that to us, and we love that.
Yeah. And I think finding, meaningful ways to maybe replace the role the church filled, not only a community and self-focused things, but service. OASIS was awesome. We loved OASIS. They did things with a food bank up in, was it Lehigh? And down in South Provo. That was really awesome and eye-opening. And then we volunteered at In Circle, doing things with our money other than pay tithing, putting it where we feel is best. And, giving generously is something that we, want to do. And so we're really happy and really comfortable with kind of where we've settled.
Yeah, and just to any students that are out there, like whether you believe or you don't, like I think the goal of this podcast was to show that there's students there that aren't telling you that are having a hard time. And so can you just please realize that they're there and be careful about what you say and be careful about the spaces you're making for them. And, we need to take care of these students. And, for example, talking about mental health, depression, suicide messages, that's been a huge focus on campus the last year. And they've said a lot of things like, if you feel like there's nothing left, you can pray to God and he'll be there for you. Well, how does that feel to someone that doesn't feel like they can pray to God? That feels like there's nothing for them. So, continue supporting the faithful, but can we support people that are having a hard time too? What can we do as fellow students, as professors, to acknowledge that they're there, and we'd like to kind of welcome them in and say, you're safe here, you can stay here, and I'm going to put my arm around you, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and the student body has been really compassionate with recent events, the on-campus suicide and different things like that, and so that's really great. And part of our mission is just to kind of raise that awareness. The Post-it note wall in the Tanner building was awesome. That was a great effort by the students just started up. And so just with further awareness, you could go to the, as a non-believing student, it could be hard to maybe feel like you're not represented. So yeah, just kind of that awareness and a continuation of that compassion.
I have 3 takeaways from this whole BYU experience. So the first one is non-Orthodox students need support groups. That is non-negotiable, and they're not going away. They're going to be there as long as there's a BYU. This is a permanent need. This needs to be there. Number 2 is...
There needs to be an off-campus, permanent, unorthodox BYU student group where you guys need to exist, but this group needs to have a Facebook group, which is like unorthodox BYU students, and it's like this umbrella clearinghouse just because BYU can't kick out everyone who just says, I'm unorthodox. And they should have like regular weekly speakers, weekly or monthly come down. There should be a culture of just fun things and getting together. And nobody needs to talk about anything scary or dangerous at that bigger group, right? Mm-hmm. Just so that a more progressive culture can, have social groups. And then other groups can exist as subgroups that have higher levels of security for the more authentic conversations. That's what I would like to see. But if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But anyway, I'm just piggybacking on what you say.
Yeah.
Because why not bring David Abakaboy down to like all the students that want to hear him, or Lindsay Henson Park or John Larson or Sam Young or whoever? Why not like this big group of like progressive unorthodox Mormon BYU students? It sounds fun. It would seem weird. Was that dangerous? What do you guys think? Am I freaking you out? Am I scaring you? Is BYU not like it used to be?
I really love the sentiment, and I agree with you. I think there may be some issues with implementing a broad umbrella non-Orthodox group, but I really like that, and I want to see if we can make that happen in the future.
And the definition of apostasy, do you affiliate with any groups who oppose the view of the church? So Sam Young could be qualified as that, and yeah,
whatever.
So,
okay.
So yeah, the first takeaway for me is the support group is a necessity, non-negotiable, here to stay. Number 2 is The Orthodox community at BYU needs to be more aware of the existence of non-Orthodox students and more welcoming to their presence. We shouldn't have that, the perspective, oh, they just need to get out of here sort of thing and like, invalidate them. Again, they're here to stay. We need to welcome them. And then the third one is on the opposite side of the spectrum. The non-Orthodox ex-Mormon community needs to understand that there will continue to be permanently students in this situation, and we need to support them. And it doesn't help to tell them, keep your head down, don't talk to anyone, transfer as soon as you can. That doesn't fit.
You hear that on Reddit quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
All over.
It's like, why are you guys even there? Get out of there. Run away.
Yeah.
You're stupid. Like,
Yeah.
have integrity, whatever those dumb people on Reddit say. They need to shut up and right?
Yeah. So these students at BYU are being pressured from both sides, and it's a really hard space to be in. So we really need to alleviate that pressure from them.
Sorry, let's see. Let's see. Okay. So there's a couple other things. As members and like individuals, I think the community's done a great job. And then there's a lot of changes that we'd like to see. You know, obviously with BYU as a whole, the Honor Code movement was great. And we participated in that to the degree that we could. You know, we encouraged students to go. It's an issue that is applicable. And the reaction, it was interesting to see the reaction to that movement. You know, there we were given this tiny, out of sight place to protest. We weren't allowed to use a microphone, and it was just totally different than any other group would have been treated on BYU. And then there's Orthodox students who are yelling, you know, if you don't like the Honor Code, go to a different school and things like that. And it's like, well, it's not. That's not the message. The message is, you know, how it's enforced and the regulation that goes on in the office. There's a couple other things with kind of more current events. The separation of church and state is kind of a big thing with BYU police losing their. I haven't kept up on that. What's happened? I think in September they were scheduled to lose their official license as an official police department, and it was because of using police resources in the police database to report students to the Honor Code office. And so the BYU police didn't have the oversight that regular police offices do from wherever that is at the state level or something, but they were given those powers and those privileges, and the church was going to appeal. And so there's this dishonesty and self-interest that the church, you know, we're not going to play by the rules, and this is obviously wrong, but we're going to defend ourselves. And so that has to change. You know, we can't. We've all got to live honestly, and yeah, and then. And then just the, professors individually are awesome. We've all had like pretty good reactions with religion professors, with science professors, and both faith building and clarifying conversations. And the issue, Free BYU has been a big movement for a long time. And so there's kind of two different branches from what I've seen with that. There's the where BYU is an explicit violation of, at least a third of the NCCU accreditation requirements. And one branch of that is student rules and enforcement. There has to be clear, objective rules, and the consequences for those rules has to be explicit and well-defined. And so the ecclesiastical endorsement system is a total loophole to that. The way the Honor Code Office works, there's just this, you never know what's against the rules, what you're going to be punished for, and there's subjectivity. And that's the purpose of so many of the requirements that the NCCU has that are being violated. The other branch of that is academic rigor and honesty. And I think that's a much smaller degree. But it says, professors have to be explicit when something's their own opinion and when something is factual. And so there's this weird blind, gray area where the mission of BYU is to promote faith and uplift and promote the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the religion department in general, it's a tough position that professors are put into. And, we sympathize with that. And so there's a lot of things that could be changed. And we hope going forward that these movements that have started can continue and make improvements.
And to all the Orthodox believing professors and students that we came out to and that loved us, there's a lot of you, and thank you.
All right. Well, have we come to the close of our day? Are you guys wiped out? We started at 8:30 in the morning, and it's now almost 5:30 in the evening. So
We need to go pick up our kid.
okay. Well, thank you all so much for all you've done, not just for the full day you've spent here, but also for all you've done to kind of not just get your own needs met, but to organize and put forth all this service and effort to help other people. So thank you. And those of you listening, please do your part to support, reach out if you need help, but also to help carry the load. Because as someone who has tried to pitch in where I can over the years, it's so much nicer. You know, they say many hands make light effort, or light, what is it? Lifting? Light work. Yeah. Many hands make light lifting. So support these guys and the women and other people. And let's keep BYU Survival Guide thriving for years to come. So the BYU Survival Guide is at BYUSurvivalGuide.com, and check it out. And again, thanks so much to everyone today who has made this possible, especially Cody Layton for all his work, his post-production, his producing. Makes a huge difference. Thanks to all of you guys who were able to come here today. It's meant a lot, and I hope you guys will stay in touch.
Thank you too.
Yep. Thanks.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, and you guys don't be strangers. I expect good things from you as well. And yeah, so without any further ado, huge thanks to Andrew Jacobs, to Jared Brinton. Hi, Janelle. And of course, to Alana and Bradley. It's been great to have you guys here, and keep up the good work, and let us know how we can support you further. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right, everyone, you guys take care. Email us at mormonstories@gmail.com if you have ideas or other things you want to talk about. Please support us if you can financially at mormonstories.org. We're a 501c3. We're financially transparent, and all your donations go to keeping the podcast alive and towards supporting members of the community that need our support. So thanks for that and support. Is there a way they can donate to you guys or throw you some bones? If
Not at the moment, but we've thought about making something in the future for that.
you guys need money, will you let me know, and I'll find people who can step up and help. Because
Everything's been potluck style so far. So
okay. Well, if you guys need financial support for an important initiative, will you let me know? All right. I'll be a little bit of a broker. All right. You guys take care, and we'll see you again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care, everybody.